In December 2009, I had the grand privilege of being able to speak on magic, witchcraft and paganism at the World's Parliament of Religion, which was being held in Melbourne. At the Parliament of Religion, representatives were gathered from all major world religions to talk on their faiths, to engender a greater feeling of understanding and cooperation between the major world religions, which have caused so much division in the world in the past. Many of the world's faiths have demonized witchcraft and magic, and to their credit, they listened with an open heart and an open mind and gave us a standing ovation when we finished delivering our topics. Delivered my discourse to a packed house that was standing room only. It was heartening to see that there was so much interest in our topic. Thousands of people did us the honour of listening about our deeply held beliefs. I hope you will do me the same honour by listening, and hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as I enjoyed delivering it on the day.
I'm the facilitator, and I'm a pagan from the US, so that's all I'm going to be saying. The panelists have decided by their own lot or rune draw or whatever method the order of speakers. And the first up is Shay de Montfort. Each panelist will be speaking for about 12 minutes, introducing themselves and saying a bit about what it's like being a pagan in modern Australia and what their experience of the Parliament is and what they'll be taking away from it. So first up, Shay, if you will please.
I'm just a mother of two. I'm Shay. You want to get to know me? Spend some time with me. Hey, I've done a lot with the Australian pagan community. If I stand here, can you actually hear me better? Yeah. Oh, that's good. Right. I've been involved in the Australian pagan community in Australia here for about 20 years. I'm not going to tell you how old I am. But what I want to do very briefly today is not so much talk about me. I want to sort of go through 8 big misconceptions about the craft, things that aren't true, a couple of things that are true about us. Let's flick through them quickly because we've only got 10 minutes. And at the end, if you've got any questions, we can answer those. So we have these popular witch images that are based on Margaret Hamilton and The Wizard of Oz or Stephen King style horror movies. And Hollywood gives us a real bad rap. But are these accusations about witchcraft true? I mean, during the 1970s, we had a plethora of these magazines come out with all of these sensational stories about witchcraft and paganism. You know, unfortunately, the truth doesn't sell papers, right? So they sensationalised it because, hey, it made good press. And even Shakespeare was guilty of a propaganda thing. If you read his early works before King James I came into England, they were very pro-pagan and pro-magic and pro-witchcraft. But when the witch hunt started with King James, he blinked, and we had Macbeth. Oh my goodness. You know, if we could have got three of us cackling around the cauldron, you would have gone straight away, I know what they are. Right? But Shakespeare reversed his propaganda line later. Why? What we want to do is put you in the judgment seat. Are any of these misconceptions about witches true? Right? How will they stand up under cross-examination? So let's have a look at popular misconception 1. What does it mean to be a witch? Right? It's come to convey a person who's bent on nastiness, and sometimes they'll just change the first letter to B. Right? If you have a look at the fear that's actually associated with the word, where do people get that fear of that actual word witch from? If you have a look at the dictionary definitions of the word witch, they're not very flattering. A female sorcerer, magician, somebody who's bent on working with this devil, an ugly or an evil-looking old witch, I'm really not comfortable with that. A fascinatingly attractive and beautiful, charming young appearing woman, okay, all right, I'll wear that one. But in wickedness, I mean, honestly, the dictionary doesn't help our cause. They've taken the popular misconceptions and put them in as the dictionary definitions. See, when you're defining a person's spirituality, you've really got to ask them about it. So let's have a look at how we define our own spirituality. Not the bad press it's been given, and believe me, ill definitions of witches continue today in Nigeria and Papua New Guinea. I don't know if you read the papers about the witch slaughters over there, and massive amount of children that are being killed because they're being accused of these negative forms of witchcraft. See, while some have it forced on them by society, and some are given definitions from papers, others embrace it. So are witches spiteful and evil? Do we hex and curse other people? Well, there's no point trying to tell you that there's no such thing as a hex or a curse. You've only got to go over to Bali and see them selling them on the streets there. But anybody who has ever practiced magic knows that there is a whole field of like Newtonian physics involved, right? That is like reaction, action, reaction, and cost. Right? That is what the threefold law is, not like it's popularised in some books by people who don't really understand it. Essentially what that means is the first time you ever try to do something that's not nice towards another person, it will come back and bite you on the bum so hard, you'll never do it again. So any practising witch is not bent on anything that is spiteful, nasty and evil. Are witches a lunatic fringe group? No, we're not. When you actually stop to have a look at the areas of the world that are occupied by people who practice indigenous magic, you'll soon realise we're actually the biggest religion in the world. It takes in areas of Asia, Africa, Middle Europe, as well as India, all practice some form of what would be defined as witchcraft. I mean, apart from witchcraft actually being the indigenous practices of Middle Europe, that are now, for the first time, last year, being taxed as a taxable service to the community in Russia and Romania. Now, are witches Satanists? No, we're definitely not. Witches do not believe in evil, the devil or Satan or hell. We see that as unnatural. Satanism is a form of Christianity. It's inverted Christianity. I'm not being flippant when I say that, but if you have a look at a satanic rite, it is the Catholic Mass inverted. It has got nothing to do with witchcraft itself. The images of what Satanism is that linked it to witchcraft actually come from a document called the Malleus Maleficarum, which was printed in 1486 to 87. Witchcraft does not adopt any harmful dogma from any other religion, although witchcraft is possibly the most inclusive belief system in all the world. Right? We will take anything that's useful and beneficial. We include anybody's deity. Right? Witches don't worship evil because there isn't anything evil in nature. Many of the practitioners of the craft are herbalists, and they find ways to actually work with the cycles and the spirits behind these cycles of nature. So who do we worship? We worship the cycles of nature, the aspects of nature personified. Right? And in polarity, we have a goddess and a god. Right? Very flippantly, these represented on the pentagram, the forces of nature as earth, air, fire and water. Are witches light workers or are they dark workers? Well, because they work with all polarities in nature, they work with both. They see the point of power as the I Ching does. The point of power exists in the middle, not by going out to any one extreme. Is the pentagram the symbol of the devil? You'd be surprised how many times people see my little innocuous pentagram and go, oh, you're a Satanist. Thank goodness for the Da Vinci Code, is all I can say. Because now people know that it's the phi ratio. It's a symbol of the phi ratio. I won't go into too much mathematics. Very flippantly, the pentagram is on a superficial level, earth, air, fire, water and spirit, and a symbol of that. But it is the symbol of the subtle reproductive forces of nature that give our craft power, right? Which the mathematics of is the phi ratio, 1 is to 0.618. Right? That is the way that nature reproduces itself. And you can see it reflected in all of nature. If you have a look at, also, how do we get the pentagram associated with witchcraft? It's generally through Pythagoras. Pythagoras is remembered for his mathematics, not his magic. But Pythagoras was a brilliant magician, and he had a goddess called Hygeia, and the pentagram became the symbol of not only his belief system, but also of hygiene. So we actually had lots of churches and lots of hospitals originally having the pentagram as their symbol. Churches were actually originally built with pentagrams in their foundations, as it represented the 5 points of faith. Frankness, fellowship, purity and courtesy, which was adopted by Christian knights. So there's the mathematics, and I won't go into that now behind the pentagram. But suffice to say, it's also in this phi spiral that we see represented in nature. Right? It's the way flowers bud. All flowers, all 5-petal flowers are actually 2 pentagrams together. Right? And we can see it in things like moth wings, fish scales, pineapple spirals, the spirals inside a sunflower, pine cones, and also lightning actually branches at that 0.618 in the pentagram ratio. Right, we're getting the wind up. So what I'd like to do is very quickly flip through some of these. Does the Bible prohibit witchcraft? That's a biggie. No, it doesn't. It's only, the word witch is only seen once in the Bible, and it's in Exodus there saying, you shall not preserve a witch alive amongst you. And it's translated in other parts of the Bible as enchanter. But that word actually, when you translate it correctly, is poisoner, or one who poisons. So you can see a newly forming society wouldn't want that word in there. It got mistranslated again by King James for political reasons. Right? And the witches in the Bible are actually approved. There is no negative case of witchcraft in the Bible. Yeah. This is a biggie. Do we sacrifice our kids? No. Not even when they misbehave. Being people who worship the cycles of nature, our children are sacred to us. The whole point of what we do is to make sure that the young are there to continue on. We worship these reproductive cycles in nature, and therefore our children are a most sacred thing. The adults who are fully empowered and working with these cycles of nature do have the responsibility to protect the children. So, seeing as how we're getting the wind up, I won't continue on with some of the things that we do, like, do we have implements and practice magic? Yes. Do we dance naked in some of our sabbats? Yes, we do, occasionally. Being naked is our sacred ritual robe. Right? We dress ourselves in the sky, so there is nothing between the gods and us. That there is no, because clothes always tell you something about a person, right? And it creates class and distinction. So when we stand in a circle, there is no head, and there is no distinction about who's high or lower. Right? If we've got nothing to hide, is the other thing. Why then, oh why, don't we come out more in the open? Well, Australia was one of the last places in the world to actually have witch hunts. Right? And we promulgated pro-pagan-da, propaganda against it right up to 2003. Our last witch hunt in Australia started in 1974, was authorised by the government and continued in Australia to 2003. Last place in any Western culture that actually had a government authorised witch hunt. Right, so we're a little nervous about coming out in the public because of that. We do have open rituals and open sabbats that you can come along to if you're curious. Right? As long as you treat us with respect, we'll treat you with respect too. And hopefully we can answer a few more questions for you before the day is out. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Shay. We'll be taking questions in general at the end of the panel. Next up is Glennis Livingstone.